try to keep it fairly brief. My internet identity, alter ego, is Dubstert. My background is mostly related to IT. I've been working in IT since 1996, back when the internet was accessible via dial-up. And unfortunately, a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things have remained the same when compared to the early days of the internet, the so-called Wild West. And if we compare the digital revolution, I guess, that's happening right now with the decentralized finance systems like Uniswap, and I guess in a way is comparable to basically to the way internet changed our lives 2 decades or 3 decades ago. And when it comes to phishing attacks, users are somewhat protected when it comes to, let's say, traditional or Web2 based phishing, as opposed to Web3 based phishing, which is more or less a bit again like the Wild West, unfortunately. And the key difference is, I guess, from what was that? From a scammer's perspective, the chances of getting caught versus the return of investment. There isn't a big danger for threat adversaries and threat actors who fish mostly crypto, because it's largely unregulated, and some authorities don't even know what to do and or are not technically prepared to deal with such kind of internet threats. And again, anti-phishing vendors are well acquainted with traditional phishing methods that are targeting Web2 organizations, let's say eBay or Netflix or banking. And the worst case scenario, if somebody gets phished in such an attack, what happens is that they either lose their credentials or their digital identity. Let's say if somebody loses their Netflix, somebody could use their account, or if somebody loses their eBay, somebody could bid on their behalf or maybe do fraudulent transactions resulting in money loss or purchasing eBay vouchers. But all of those events are more or less mitigatable by contacting the relevant entity, let's say Netflix or eBay, and up to a certain amount, losses are redeemable. In the banking world, most banks have some sort of deposit guarantees, even though they are more or less imaginary due to the quantitative easing and artificial printing of money, which is uncontrolled and is tolerated by the central banks. And of course, the regional banks do whatever suits them. So even though they're broke, basically, most of the banks, they still lend money to institutions and people alike. But if you get phished, they will at least try to return the losses. And this is the big difference in the Web3 world. If you get phished, basically that's it. The assets won't be recovered. So in that aspect, it's very crucial to target Web3 phishing specifically and tackle it in a little bit different way than the traditional phishing. And I have just a few methods here that I have prepared. It's nothing. Well, we do actually have a bunch of non-disclosure agreements and methods that I cannot show, but the ones I can show you are already uploaded, and they are applicable both to Web2 and Web3 phishing. The key difference is that in the Web3 world, we have to shut down the bad sites as fast as possible and add them to all sorts of blacklists like Google Safe Browsing, just so that we can protect users in almost real time. The other bit that I do in order to protect users, even if a given phishing site has not been taken down yet, is to add the phishing URLs to GitHub, namely in the MetaMask it phishing detect repository. And by doing that, anybody who has the MetaMask extension is actually protected even before the site gets revoked. And that's actually the power of open source. Anybody can contribute here, and this is really a nice thing. And this information gets consumed by a lot of entities, so not only MetaMask, but Wallet Connect, Trust Wallet, and other vendors also consume it. So let's go to the methods and dive in. The first one is fairly straightforward. Just use any email that has been leaked. I guess everybody has such email that was leaked somewhere, and simply wait for phishing to arrive there and then report it. The first place to report it is SpamCop, because it checks the URLs and it automatically sends the reports to the relevant entities. Then we can send the bad URLs to vendors like FishTank, URLscan, or Netcraft, or Fishfort. So the more vendors flag the bad content, the better. And this is again, it's good to have let's say some fish is geofenced, so it opens from only a given country. The more vendors flag it, the higher the chances are it will get revoked even without reports being sent to the registrar. So the other bit that we do, this is perhaps my favorite bit, it's done in real time. The script's called Phishing Catcher by Source. It's open sourced and it can be used to sniff a search stream in real time. And what it does is basically checks Kalidoc stream, which is a service provided by Sectigo, and it matches any weird, so to speak, domain names based on a scoring system. This scoring system uses a bunch of entropy checks and mathematical checks and language similarity checks to check out, let's say, variations of brands that we're interested in. So let's say uniswap.cc or something like this was registered. The moment the threat actors create a certificate for it, the clock starts ticking because we see this in the certificate stream. So this is a neat way to actually monitor everything that's happening on TLS SSL level, and that way we can have a sneak peek at scammers' activities. The other thing, it's a retrospective check. It's called Hunting Newly Registered Domains. It's a Python script again. It's more or less does the same, but instead in real time it does it for the day before. So let's say today it's the 2nd of July. We grab a file which contains all new files, all new domains which were registered on the 1st of July. And again, if they contain keyword which is interesting to us, let's say Uniswap, we can again observe the results. The other sentence that I tend to use for catching phishing is URLscan, and it's very nice because scammers are lazy. They tend to reuse their both hosting, domains, and scam templates. So by hashing a given file, we can experimentally find other sites which have those files there. So that way, even if domain has nothing to do with Uniswap, let's say it's a completely different domain or defaced site, if it has the phishing kit inside of it, we can grab it, as long as somebody scanned it on URLscan. This is applicable again to file names. So let's say MetaMask logo is a SVG file and it's fairly often used. So we can simply search for this SVG file and find MetaMask fishes. Same goes for hashes, so hash sums of the files. Same VPS. This is scammers tend to reuse a lot of hosting providers, especially bulletproof hosting, like for example FlowSpec Ukraine or CracksFactSpecs Russia. So those registrars and hosters don't usually pay attention to abuse reports, and thus on the same IP address it's likely to find more than one phish. Other vendors like Security Trail and Security Trails, Risk IQ, and DNS Dumpster also allow us to deep dive into the bad guys' infrastructure and find even more scams. So by finding one scam, by observing where it's hosted, we can find even more scams. And the last bit of my so-called presentation, I don't know how the time goes, but whatever. So those are the common ways scammers try to scam users. I'll be very brief on those. So fake YouTube videos, you've seen those. They use botted systems to generate views so that YouTube's algorithms pick it up, and users who are interested in crypto will receive the video in their side view as a related live stream or whatever. And usually there is a recording of an existing event, but they just change the text and it's like, hey, I'm Vitalik and I'm sending you 5 ETH if you send me 2 first or whatever. So this is the oldest scam in the book, and oddly enough it still works. The bad thing is YouTube are too slow to take those down, and it's a constant whack-a-mole game. Bitcoin revolution scams, those are again very common. Depending on where you live, the sites are made so that, let's say if you're in the UK and you open a Bitcoin revolution scams, you will see a famous person who is in the UK, let's say Sir Jeremy Clarkson, or some TV personality who got rich from crypto and whatever. And if you're in the US, it will be a famous US person, and so on. And those are semi-legit because they're always related to legitimate payment services, but they ultimately seek to rob investors, and they then disappear. Fake exchanges and investment platforms, those are the same. Those are a dime a dozen. I mean, there's so many and so much. They constantly spam with them, and they only change the logo and the name, so it's easy to spot them once you have one sample. Twitter verified scams, again, very often seen and unfortunately hard to tackle. Twitter is late with what can you do? It's useful to monitor those because that way we can see the URLs used by the scammers and nuke them and report them. They do all sorts of trickery, like they find a legitimate tweet by a legitimate crypto person and they use reply scam with stolen verified accounts so that it looks like as if the same person replied to their own tweet, but it's actually a different one. Discord DM unsolicited spam. So again, very often, every day we have spam in Discord. We try to warn users. We have all sorts of warning messages like don't do this, don't do that. But I mean, users ignore it, and in the end, we constantly spam with this thing, and it doesn't really help. What can you do? Fake ICOs. Those are, well, again, from 2017, nothing has changed, but people still fall for them. Well, some of them are pretty complex and have like approval trickery and other hidden functions that can still rob you and rug pull you. So always be careful. And the fake Uniswap nodes, that's like resynchronize your wallet or whatever fake reason to enter your seed phrase. Never enter your seed phrase. Compromised device, this is the tough one. Well, if your computer, tablet or iPhone gets hacked and you use it to trade crypto, it's a matter of time that you will be robbed. And unfortunately, usually very high profile targets are victim of this. So it's spear phishing plus whaling. So whaling is like phishing but targeting very rich people. And the last vector, I guess, is fake hardware wallet supports, which make you enter again your phrase. SIM swapping is very dangerous, but only if you use two-factor authentication with GSM. Social engineering attacks. This is again similar to the Discord, the spam, but can vary. Fake wallets and Google Play Store apps, very big vector for scammers to operate and unfortunately hard to take down. And the last, I think, piece is fake forms in Google Forms or other forms, which are like, hey, do you want to participate in this airdrop? Enter your stuff here and you're good to go. So those are the common ways scammers try to scam users. Of course, the list is not comprehensive, and we try to circumvent the fraudsters as much as we can, but it really is a constant whack-a-mole game. So thank you for the support and for your time, and I hope this has been at least to some extent useful. Cheers.